Hi there and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for part two of our Youth Voice training series. In part one, we explored what Youth Voice really means, offered a framework to assess your current work, and shared some key resources to help you get started. Today, we're turning the spotlight on action. You'll hear directly from programs that are walking the walk, centering youth voice in powerful and practical ways. They'll share how young people shape their work and what they've learned about doing it well, and one concrete thing that you can do to start strengthening the youth voice work in your own program starting tomorrow. One thing you'll hear across all of the stories is that supporting youth voice doesn't mean stepping aside completely. It means showing up differently. Youth should be partners, not just passengers in this work. And that includes adults offering guidance, asking the right questions, and opening doors with the knowledge and connections that they bring. It's a shared journey. So, with that, let's dive in to the work being done by our incredible partners.
I'm Kristen Dorfman. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a program manager with EarthForce. And EarthForce is a nonprofit. We've been around for 30 years, and our whole thing is environmental action civics, or EAC. You'll hear me say that a lot. Environmental action civics is a way of teaching and learning and interacting with students where youth adult partnership, youth voice, and community civic action is right at the forefront. So our six-step EarthForce process, we take young people through an investigation of an environmental civic issue in their community, investigate it, talk to all the stakeholders, and really get a full view of their issue. And then we're leading with those students to either do a project or take civic action on that issue for a sustainable long-term solution. So through all of those things, we really focus on working with young people in partnership as equals, really uplifting student voice and getting as involved in a community issue, in a civic issue as they can. We've seen that young people who are involved in civic life from a young age are much more likely to be civically engaged as adults. So that's really what we're going for when we talk about environmental action civics, or EAC. So that's what we do. And at EarthForce, my whole role is to train educators, whether those are folks in the classroom, folks in non-formal or informal spaces, folks who are leading their staff to go on and train their staff in environmental action civics and what they do. So I build a lot of partnerships. I train folks. I occasionally work with young people, but for the most part, we work with adults so that they can sharpen their skills and learn how to interact with young folks in that way that is in a more equal partnership. I mean, youth voice is like everywhere in the EarthForce process. It is the thread that runs through it. And we always talk about in our trainings, like, where throughout the process do you see youth voice coming up? And everyone's like, everywhere. Because we have what we call our three essential experiences. So I'll just talk about those because they fit really well. And they do illustrate how youth voice like really fits into our six-step EarthForce process. But our three essential experiences are that youth select an issue that is rooted in their lived experience to research and dig into and take action on. So, number one, youth select the issue that they want to work on based in their lived experience. The second one is that young people co-create their learning environment. And so that's things like sharing in decision making, sharing in responsibilities once you start planning for your action project, sharing in that task management, sharing in that reflection, so that it's not just the adult or the educator like driving all of those things. It's that young people are leading and making decisions in partnership with adults. And that's that youth adult partnership piece. And our last essential experience is that young people are engaging in community power structures, speaking to power and making an ask for change. And that's that kind of civic engagement piece. So to recap, those three are youth select an issue, youth co-create their learning environment, and that young people engage in power structures in their community and ask for change. And all three of those, I think, really embody youth voice, where it's young people making the decisions, young people kind of driving the project about what they want to do, how they want to do it, who they want to consult and work with, and who they want to ask for change and what they would like that ask to be, whether that is to community policymakers, school decision makers, Other folks in their community say for a more like personal behavior change, they might advocate for folks to use compost bins more often. And that's still kind of an ask for change in practice to people other in their community. And all of those like transcend the entire Earth Force process. So at every step when you're working with young people, we are looking for where is a place where if we're making a decision that young people can make that decision. And whether it is super small, about like uh, what do we want to talk about today? Or a really big decision about like, okay, what do we want to do for our semester long project? What issue do we focus on? Who do we want to talk to? That's a really great place to highlight youth voice kind of wherever you can. Um, and that is how we kind of weave together those three essential experiences and our whole process. And I always tell people like if you can't do an entire Earth Force process front to back, that's okay. As long as you incorporate one or two or three of the essential experiences, like young people are still having a a formative time and a like net positive impact on their life if they're having one of these experiences. So the Earth Force process is one way of getting to environmental action civics, but not the only way. And it's a really good framework for taking young people through investigating an issue or working on a project. It's a really great framework for project-based learning, place-based learning, inquiry-based learning, like all of those. If you're in that world, the process is going to step through all of those. So step one is discovery. And this can look like taking your students out to do some problem finding in your community, taking a look at what's present in our community, what is missing, what are some of the issues, strengths, weaknesses. That can look like a community inventory. So just looking around and seeing what's going on in our community, who's here, what's going on. Step two is a decision-making phase, and that is where students are selecting that issue, that single issue that they want to work on for the rest of their time. And that really connects to that essential experience that we talked about. Step three is research. So students are really digging into the issue that they selected, talking to community experts, gathering as much information as they can about who, what, where, when, why to get the full picture of the issue that they're working on. Step four is another decision-making step, and this is where students are deciding on the strategy that they want to take to address their issue. So there's a lot of like criteria-based decision-making, debate, discussion, again, that youth will coming in there, to decide what do we want to do about the thing? What change do we want to see? And step five is your action step, where you are taking the action, you're making the ask for change, you're doing the project, you are getting out in your community and making that change happen. This is a really good step for that youth adult partnership where you are sharing in decision making, sharing in task management, sharing in like executive functioning that needs to happen to make this project go. And step six is researching, reflection and assessment, where you are reflecting as a group on how things grew, how things changed, what did we get done, what advice would we give for someone to do this all over again. Um, that is my favorite step. I think it is the most important to do that co-reflection with your students. And again, golden egg opportunity for student voice right there as you're reflecting. And that's it. That's the whole Earth Force process. The thing that you can start doing tomorrow to uplift youth voice in your programs is start getting to know your students, building rapport and building a relationship with the young people who you're working with is going to give them the safety and confidence and energy that they need to start feeling like their voice does matter and to start using it. There's a really awesome quote from Bell Hooks. But basically she says something along the lines of like, if we claim to love our young people and respect them, that respect looks like listening to them. And so yeah, listening and building that relationship are the two things that you can do to start letting youth voice take the center stage in your program.
My name's Daisy Lemus, she, her, aya pronouns. I'm the education manager at Sawhorse Revolution. Sawhorse Revolution is a Seattle-based nonprofit. We do design builds with youth, and kind of like at the core of our values is developing a community-oriented youth through design, architecture, carpentry, and trade. We want to empower youth to practice like hands-on skills and then use these skills in whatever way they see fit. We don't necessarily push students to or youth to go into the design or into the trade. And if that's something they want to do, we have resources for them. It's just, kids live in their neighborhoods and they want to make their neighborhoods a better place. And that's kind of where we step in to help make that happen. We have design in the fall. We start off with the design portion. That's our kind of like starting session. Youth work with architects, designers, and also the community partner. We partner up with a community org or some mutual aid folks in the Seattle area. And then students go through the design process with the community partners and then also with the architects and other design mentors that they have. So part of what that looks like is doing like a site analysis, doing a client interview where they ask the community partner, like, what are your needs? What are like the issues that you're running into? And how can we create a structure, something that's being built that can help ease some of these issues or problems, tensions that are happening. At the end of the design program, typically they last between 10 to 12 weeks, depending on kind of when we start. But at the end, they present to their community partner, and then they also present to the community at large. So we have a celebration at the end of both design and build that's really heavily focused on the students and honoring and celebrating their work, as well as giving them the opportunity to speak about kind of their experiences. Springtime we build, so then students sometimes are the same as design, sometimes they're different students who are maybe a little bit more build oriented, but we'll work with carpenters and other folks who work in the trades, other people who are skilled in carpentry or using power tools. Also at the end of build, we also have a celebration. Usually students kind of take folks through like a little site walk depending on the nature of the structure we're building. And they'll explain some of the components of what was designed and maybe how that design changed while it was being built. But students are still like the focus of that celebration. And it's really, like you built the thing, you built the structure and it now lives in your community. And I would say youth voice is like really important for Sawhorse and for our work. Our work focuses on youth, and who better than the youth themselves to be able to tell us like, hey, this is going well, or like, actually, I hate doing this and I don't like this anymore. I think particularly with like after school programs, students choose to be there. They choose to be there every single day or the days that they are there. But to me, it's something that it's like a choice that is actively happening. And I've heard this from youth themselves when I interview them at the end of our programs, where they're like, it's not like school where we're kind of all forced to go to school to a certain degree. They're like, but everyone who signs up for example, like a Sawhorse program, they are choosing to be here. They want to be here. We're all here for the same reason, which is to like improve our communities or to give back to our communities. So I feel like in that element, for us, it's really important to like honor student voice and in the ways that students are comfortable sharing their voice. So for us, a lot of that is youth choice. We do like an end of program survey, which has a lot of demographic information that's multiple choice that comes typically at the very end of our programming. We also do student interviews, student exit interviews. And then while the program is happening, we collect student stories. And that can come from things that us as staff have observed, or that other mentors have observed and they share with us. So that's kind of the 3 ways that we approach it throughout the program besides our celebrations where students present. First and foremost, students have the option of opting out. Before we start any like exit interviews or before we do our end of program surveys, we tell students like, this is where this information is going to go. This is how it's going to be used. Typically it's used for fundraising and grants. And then from there, students can say yes or no. They're not penalized in any way. And then students are asked, for example, for exit interviews, do you want your name attached to this? Do you want your responses to be anonymous? I won't put a name. I can just put your first name. I can put your first name, last initial, if you want your full name in there and you want your credit, I can do that too. Yeah, from there, we actually get into the exit interview. We have 10 questions and they're not going to answer all 10 questions, but they have 10 questions to choose from, and they can choose 3 to 4, maybe 5 questions that they feel like called to speak on. So that gives them the choice to speak about things that they want to speak about or that they feel knowledgeable speaking about without us being like, you have to answer, only these 4 questions. The questions have been worked out and worded in a way where they're not a yes or no answer. They're more of if you're thinking about school, like an extended response or a short answer type of situation. So students are able to kind of describe their experiences. I also let students know, like, hey, if I have follow-up questions, I might ask them. You are free to say no. You are free to be like, I'm not going to answer that question. And like I said, that typically does not happen. But when it does happen, it's like, thank you for advocating for yourself. We'll move on to the next question. I would say, like, even in our downtime, like that is still time to like capture student voice, because that's where students are, you're just chit-chatting. It's building that relationship, building that connection of like, you're here in our program, but we care about you beyond just what you're doing here. We care about you in the sense of, in the whole sense, right? Of like, you're a member of our community, you're a youth, you go to school, you do so many things. And I think like having those conversations with youth early on and just being like, how was your day at school? Like, where are you going on, where are you going on vacation? All these like little, like what feels like small chat really lead us into the like maybe a slightly more like powerful story, or students being able to be more honest with us when we're doing the extra interviews of like, hey, I enjoyed this, but like I did not enjoy this. The other thing that we do is that we do pay students a stipend. It is based on, so they can either get a stipend or community service hours. Most Seattle public schools, and I would say most private schools in the Seattle area, do require some amount of community service hours. And with our program, students, depending on the length of the program, and their attendance, but students can knock out like 40 to 60 hours doing one program, right? And so if you do 2, that's 80 to 120 hours. So students are able to like get those out of the way doing maybe like a program or 2. The stipend amounts look different depending on like the time commitment, and also keeping in mind for our programs that run every single day, that also means that students won't be able to work a summer job. So keeping that in mind and adjusting the stipend amount has been really successful that we've seen. So we really want to show students that like their work is valuable. What you're doing here is important, and that is why you're getting a stipend. That is why you're getting community service hours. I would say typically students are specifically for build are able to really choose like, I like this task. Or maybe they have some limitations. They're like, hey, I actually don't want to be digging out holes. Or they can switch and they're like, I want to dig out. We had a group of students who like really liked gardening, and so they were like, we love digging, we want to dig all the time. And yeah, that was what they did most of the time, was digging. But for design, I feel like design's a little bit harder because we do kind of have, I wouldn't say it's a more like prescribed, but it's more of like, hey, we're all sketching. And so I think on the surface there seems like there's a little bit less student choice in that. But I would say in the design, student voice comes out a little bit more because they're the ones actually designing what the structure is going to look like. So they're working with the design mentors, the architects, the designers, and other folks to really be like, okay, what if we had double doors? And then we talk about, client needs versus like the aesthetic, and like, will this cause a safety issue? Like, will this be broken into more? And trying to problem solve and think about kind of all the layers that go into that. And there's a lot of choices that need to be made when we're designing a structure. And I will say sometimes students get overwhelmed by the amount of choices where they're like, what do you mean I'm choosing the roof, and I'm choosing the siding, and I'm choosing out where the windows go, and I'm choosing out what types of doors we have. And sometimes I'll be like, hey, like, what door do we want? And they're like, what do you mean? We just want a regular door. And I'm like, but does it go on this wall, this other wall, this other wall? Like, maybe we don't want a door at all. So there's lots of choice that come out in that. And I would say for design, the thing that we kind of run into is that decision paralysis, is trying to figure out like, okay, how can we maybe not limit the amount of choices, but how can we support you going through these very many choices? Both for design and build, it's really, we try to really not tell students, but kind of so students get the feeling that it's not just individual choices, right? Like if we have a program with 12 youth and 5 mentors or 6 mentors, and we're each making individual choices, we're not going to have a cohesive design or build. So what, we need to think of like the collective and also like the client, and how can we solve, like conflict. There really isn't conflict, but like how can we combine multiple ideas into one cohesive idea? And it's really amazing because students are really good at doing this, especially if they kind of get to decide how they do that. And we really try to leave some of those choices up to students of like, how do you want to get to this final consensus? And it's just every single time it's different. And every single time you have, even within the same group, you have different students who kind of step up to the plate and they're like, hey, like, I think we should go this way. But it's just overall like really cool to see how all their brains work. I would definitely say student choice, trying to give as much student choice as possible within the program that you have in a way that is manageable for you and also for your students. Um, I would also say, and these are not in order of importance, I would also say like informing students of like the reasoning behind why they're doing something. Um, whether it can really truly be anything. But I think that students, when they hear like, hey, this is my reason for doing this is how we're using the information we're collecting from you, or this is how we're kind of using what you're telling us, it gives them it gives them the agency and the power to make informed decisions, which I feel like, and students have also said that they feel like they really don't get the opportunity to do. And I would say the third thing is really just trying to like meet students where they're at. And I feel like that really depends on like the demographic or the group of students you're working with. I know that changes for us all the time. But and it's something that I also try to remember, we also have rough days of like sometimes students don't want to do anything and it's like, dang, why, like how can I get to you? And sometimes it really is just like letting that student or that youth just sit in that room because that might be the only safe space they have. And letting them just sit there and hoping, and I always like to be like, thank you for being here. I hope to see you next week. And those like that interpersonal connection is so important because students, youth want community as much as like we do. And so I think really like focusing on that community aspect really leads to like student voice. It leads to students feeling empowered that they can express themselves, and that what they say will be taken seriously and that it will be, considered. So I would say those are my top 3. I would also say the thing that you can really implement tomorrow is really telling students like, or youth, like, hey, this is why you're doing this. And then, like I said, they can make informed decisions and decide what is best for them.
Great. Hi, my name is Luella Provenza, and I am the UF Partnership Specialist with Technovation.
And I'm Abby May Pitcher, and I am our program manager for the US with Technovation.
And Technovation, we are a global tech ed organization, and our goal is to help young people, especially young girls, identify challenges in their community and pair it with technology to generate solutions. Our goal is to ensure that young people have access to the ability to become social entrepreneurs generating tech-based solutions. Young people in the Technovation program basically are creating tech-based solutions to challenges that they see in their community and across the world. We leverage sustainable development goals to really look at how they want to change the world. And so our young people are using coding and AI to develop solutions to responsible consumption. We've got apps that are created by young people that are helping figure out how to do sustainable fashion versus young people that are leveraging coding and AI to impact mental health and well-being of their peers. Regardless of how our young people want to change the world, we help them figure out how to have conversations in their community to make sure that the challenge that they're trying to solve is something that other folks are struggling and dealing with, and getting their direct feedback on how to develop a solution that they would want to use in their community to make meaningful change. And so our program runs in kind of 3 different parts. One, we help young people identify that problem, but then also understand the ins and outs of coding and AI to begin to develop that tech-based solution. We help them identify potential competitors in the market to figure out how their solution potentially could go above and beyond and help folks a little bit more intentionally. And so our goal is to help folks become social entrepreneurs through technology and generating those solutions. And then our last part of our program is our global competition. And so young people that feel like they've got a solution that the world should see, they can submit to our competition on an annual basis and get direct feedback from industry professionals on their apps. Yeah, so the way that Technovation supports young people throughout the globe is actually working directly with, whether that be educators inside schools or in after-school settings, and we support them through kind of comprehensive, ongoing training and support as it relates to curriculum. And so our curriculum is completely open access and available for folks to use today. And the way that it's broken up is in grade bands. And so we have a beginners division that's aimed at grades 3 through 5, starting at 8 years old, going to our junior division that is geared towards 6th through 8th grade, and then our senior division that is geared towards 9th and 12th grade. I think youth voice, what youth voice means to me is allowing youth to drive their learning. And specifically in the Technovation experience, we allow young people to identify that challenge that's near and dear to them that they're interested in solving. And we provide them the tools in order to advance their solution. We had one participant say that Technovation helped them figure out how to learn and gave them the tools to kind of basically self-discover. And I think that's really important to us as an organization, that students feel like they're in charge, not only of their learning, but developing solutions. And as we look to the future, I think it's really important that youth are involved in the here and the now on future innovations that are not only related to climate change, but education, healthcare, you name it, because it is their community in the here and the now, but also in the future.
I'll just say, I'm kind of pulling from my experience talking to educators that are doing this with students kind of across the US and what I've heard from them, as well as my own experience with we have a little chapter here in Merced where I live, and that is a beginner division. So we've got girls as young as 8 up through 12 that this past year went through the Technovation program, designed some awesome apps, and really led the way. So that brings me, I think, to my first best practice would be to let the youth really lead, which I know sounds really cliche, but what's neat is that in a lot of these, with these different after school programs, and even our chapter here in Merced that was led by one of the teachers at the school, the facilitators often don't have deep coding knowledge. And so the adults are very much learning coding and learning AI and all of the things just alongside the students. And so that learning alongside the students process, it can be really humbling. I remember sitting down with a group of students, they're like, we want to build an app that can like filter recipes by dietary restrictions. And I'm like, holy cow, I have no idea where to even begin. But we sat down together. We actually started by asking ChatGPT where we should begin, and I modeled that process with them and showed them what I was getting. And we kind of together figured out what they would need to put into their app so that it could filter by dietary restrictions. And so, letting the students lead and learning alongside them I think is really key to elevating youth voice, and letting them see that you're willing to learn with them, that they're not below you in that sense. The second one would be the focus on like the what's right around them, that they can be the experts on what they're interested in, is I think another area of best practice. We do use the UNSCGs as kind of a framework, but we really challenge the students to think through what are they seeing in the communities right around them that's personal to them, and how could you engage that. And so, right, the girls that were building this app with the dietary restrictions, they come from a Muslim background where they do have dietary restrictions, and so they kind of knew what they needed. There was another student I was able to meet in Texas that has diabetes, and so she built an app that she was like, I would want this, to help me think through, where's my blood sugar levels and what do I need to eat based on where my blood sugar is at, and so letting the students be the expert and encouraging them, like, your community best, your own experience best, design your solution focused on that. And then the last best practice, I think, is just those real life connections and the community connections. We, on our virtual platform where students sign up, they can connect with industry professionals and mentors virtually across the world. We have, coaching available for students. And of course, those like local community connections are awesome too. And so making sure the students are getting connected with, whether it's a community partner or local business. We've had students that will design their solution specifically for like an organization in their community that says, hey, I need an app that does this. Can you build it for me? And they'll build it for them. And then just making sure that they, have access to role models and people that can give them that real life perspective. So those are my top 3 best practices. So there are 2 kind of next day resources that I'd love to highlight. The first, as Luella mentioned, is our curriculum for the beginner division, especially that's at 8 through 12 grade band age band, 8 years old up through 12 years old. And that the student curriculum is student facing, and so it's designed to be accessed by the students for that self-paced kind of student driven learning. There are videos for them to watch, as well as like interactive features to the online curriculum, and then activities that they can do right out and about in their community that come with worksheets that can be customized. So definitely, I would say, like, if you go to our website, so techinnovationchallenge.org, there's a blue button at the top that says curriculum, and then there's the beginner curriculum. You hit that button, and then you've got access to all that content. And I'd say the first couple of those lessons especially are key in this youth voice, kind of establishing that foundation, because that's where they're like identifying their values, thinking through what communities they belong to, what challenges impact those communities, and how technology can come in to help. So first couple of lessons in the beginner division curriculum on our website. And then the second one, I would also, if you're looking for something that's, maybe like a rapid design process where they kind of do all of this, but sort of in miniature, we also have mini Technovation, and that follows the same process where they find a problem. They don't actually build out the app. They do a little bit of coding or algorithmic thinking, and then they'll like draw out the app at the end. And so that's a nice kind of way to pilot, these ideas and all of this with young folks, and start to establish that foundation of elevating youth voice in your context. Our bread and butter is partnering with, organizations and with schools. And so if your organization or your school is looking to integrate Technovation in one way or the other, we'd love to get in contact with you and make sure that you get the support from our staff. Don't do it on your own. That's what our jobs are, is to support, the folks that are out there that are trying to integrate, this tech innovation process into their space. So please reach out to us.
James Fields. I am a senior director of youth councils here at MCFA Challenge, and I'm also a MCFA alum. MCFA Challenge mission is to make sure that the young people that we are serving are active participants, that are engaged, that are informed, to be able to promote a just and equitable society. We want them to be able to have a seat at the table, and we want them to be able to influence public policy on a local and national level. So in practice, we have 2 chapter sites, one both in Chicago, which is our founding chapter site, and then one both in DC. And they're the only two sites that have what we call citywide youth councils, where young people are working in an out of school time program. They'll come together around once a week. They'll tackle issues around education, safety, and justice. So we have two citywide youth councils, one focused on education, and then one is focused on safety and justice in both of our chapter sites in both DC and Illinois. I work in our Illinois site in Chicago, where I have an honor of working with the Student Advisory Council that is in partnership with MIC for Challenge and CPS. So we work directly with district leaders and the CEO of CPS for young people to be able to influence, those policies and their implementation. For example, that's looking at CPS's 5-year strategic plan, and young people are able to share just how they feel about that strategic plan and promote what it looks like for them to have a safe and thriving experience within the educational system and with CPS. So that's really cool. And then we have our Safety and Justice Council that works directly with Cook County Board President in an after-school setting where these young people get to be able to, present policy recommendations around juvenile justice and safety for young people throughout all of Cook County. They come together in an after school time program setting, like on a Thursday night, where we're there for about 3 hours. What's really important is to always make sure how young people are feeling before they enter into space. So we have a check-in station, right? As soon as they get off the elevators, we're in the hallway playing music, feelings wheel check-ins, pick 2 words on how you're feeling to make sure that they have an opportunity to enter in that space, but they also practice their social and emotional awareness and learning. So that's really, really cool. Then they'll sign in. We'll all come together, right? We'll do another like vibe check to make sure that everybody has a space to be able to enter their voice into a space before we move forward. That's really essential. Like we do not move forward without young people all entering their voice in the space. We also practice and honor everything that we do with our young people in circle because it's free of power dynamic and we have a talking piece and you pass it from one heart to one heartbeat to the next heartbeat. Those are some of the essential things that we do to really cultivate and create that emotional space of belonging for our young people. And we've seen it happen and we've seen it work with our young people, definitely giving us reflection on how they're experiencing our program. So when we go through our program, it's also really important that we incorporate them in every single thing that our facilitators do. So our young people debrief with us. So they talk about what went well in session, what they want to be able to see differently, and how is their experience in session. So at every single point of engagement, we're trying to hear how they feel, what their experience is, and what we need to do to shift within our program. So we think about high arts ladder, right? And we want to be at the very top with young people being able to take the lead within programming. So every single session, also young people has for leadership roles, which you have to sign up to say you're leading us through the check-in. You're taking us through the community beliefs today. So that's just like a high level overview of like what we do within program and what our rituals and routines are. And we ground our practices in, positive youth development, and our MICFA issues to action curriculum is where we do a lot of our skill building and capacity building for our young people. And not only am I a living witness, but the alumni that we have and the young people that we get feedback from, say that they feel like they have a space that they belong and they feel heard, seen, valued, uplifted, and respected. What use voice means to me specifically is being able to know that every single young person has a lived experience that needs to be valued, uplifted, and respected and implemented. So it's not just hearing young people out and nodding your head and saying, wait, great idea, great solutions, go for it. But it's actually, making sure that when you're honoring youth voice, we have to honor these youth and adult partnerships, right? And look at it as a partnership and look at them as partners and equal contributors in the process of whatever we're navigating through, which means if a young person speaks in first draft, honor their thoughts in first draft, right? As they develop their thoughts, right? And give them true space, right? As a partner to, uplift their ideas, uplift their solutions, and really be a sounding board for who they are. If it's them who is the generation that we want to be able to see as change makers, their time is not 10 years from now or 5 years from now. Their time is always now. So being able to respect, uplift, value, and implement their ideas and solutions, right? And have it be authentic and intentional. Know what you want to do with young people when you want to do it. And hold yourself accountable for making sure that you actually do it, right? They're going to hold you accountable. For so many times, there's adults who are not owning the words and the expressions and the intentions and the community beliefs or the agreements that they're actually, coming and co-creating with young people, right? Not only do they need to co-create it and lead that, they need the adults to be able to support that. So I believe youth voice is like authentically and intentionally letting young people share their lived experience and being valued by whoever's in that space and know that you're not creating a table for them, right? The table is already set for them to be able to engage, and they're the ones that should be prioritizing what issues that they want to be able to unpack with you, right? Not the thing that we've been conditioned to, where it's like really a adult heavy and adult focus, right? And what we believe here at MCFIT is that you give young people, right, like all of the things that they need, right, so that they could be active, informed, and engaged, which means they need to be able to research, which means they need to be able to know what their why is and what their lived experience is and how valuable that is for adults to be able to hear. They need to be able to be affirmed with the things that they carry and they navigate through and they survive through, right? Because they want to be able to create a democracy that reflects them. And our goal is to make sure that they have a seat at the table, right? That's set by them to do so. So we ask our adult partners and we ask our stakeholders to make sure that you are willing to be able to be co-creators within this experience for our young people. We give them the space to be able to do Soapbox, right? Soapbox Nation is one of the most beautiful things that I've ever witnessed within any space of doing youth work because young people get to talk about an issue that directly impacts them, that they care about, that they do research about, that they have data around, that they have a lived experience around, and that they also have a call to action, right? And that call to action is to make sure that adult partners and collaborators and stakeholders know what is pressing for them, know what is important for them. So at MCFA, we believe in giving our young people actually a platform, right? Providing them a platform to share about their soapbox speeches or providing them a space to be able to implement policy recommendations. We've had a National Youth Summit twice. Where we bring all of these amazing young people from all 50 different states to come together in DC and we take them to the Hill. So we don't talk about youth voice, we actually implement youth voice. So these young people all came together to think about issues that directly impact them. And then they go advocate for them, right? With those people who are in power. So, we believe that young people need to be directly involved and engaged within the process of implementation of how our government operates. And our hopes is that one day, right, one of our young people actually have a seat at the table where they create more opportunity for young people who look like them in their communities and represent them well with the decision making that'll happen, whether on a local or national level, when we think about our democracy. The top three youth voice best practices. Always know that our young people carry all of the people and all of the experiences that they navigate through and through in community every single day. And that should be affirmed and celebrated as a win, right? Not as a deficit, right? Not as something that is signifying that something's wrong with them or wrong with their community. They have challenges. We all have challenges, and we all have to be able to figure out how do we develop solutions for those challenges. So affirming them in their authentic truths and knowing that that's the first start of establishing trust, right? Also like having community agreements and beliefs that's grounded in how you're going to um, be in community with each other, right? How you're going to navigate with each other because all have different ideas and we all have different strategies and we all have different thought processes. But we all sometimes have the same goal, which is to be able to bring about change, which is to make sure that the people who are most marginalized have their voice heard and uplifted and respected and valued. So making sure that you have the community belief so that the group can be cohesive and understand what the collective expectation is, and then it goes back to trust, right? Um, I would think the third thing is understanding that not only do young people have a voice in that lived experience and they need those community beliefs or agreements to navigate through a space, they need you as a trusted adult to mirror back to them what it is that we hope they can develop or explore more or figure out, right? Which looks like for me in practice, if you are a young person who is extremely compassionate about bringing about change, not only for your family, but your community and your school, like we got to make sure we give you all of the tools and the resources that you need to be able to accomplish that goal because that makes it better for the generation that's coming after you. That makes it better for all the people who came before you. And that's the real work. Um, so, for me, I believe in, giving that young person every single thing that they need, love, the resources, a listening ear, a safe space, right? The words, right? It's really important that we do feelings words, and I'll go back to it again. Sometimes our young people don't have the language to express how they feel. But if you can equip them with a tool of a feelings wheel, if you can make sure that they know what it is to check in and somebody's always asking how you're doing, you're actually giving them every single thing that they need to be equipped to bring about that change. If we're going to ask them to change the world, we got to make sure that they have all of the tools to do so. So I believe in giving them the tools and the resources that they need. I believe in affirming them in their voice and their identity and the people that they carry within the spaces. And I believe that we all have to have trust, which are those community agreements, which are those community beliefs, which are those norms that help guide our connection in the group. They need to be able to understand the value of their voice and their lived experience and also their time. And we all know that time is one of the most precious currencies. They're giving us their time, their expertise, their lived experience, and they're working hard. So it's okay if we give them a stipend and say, hey, we appreciate and acknowledge the work that you have done. And even though this may not be a lot, we hope that this is just an appreciation for what we see you contribute. Pay them, right? I understand there's club concepts. I understand that there are different things, right? And it may not be a budget. But a gift card would be awesome. I would say that outside of that, feed them. There's so many young people who do not have their basic needs met, but we're asking them to come and do some heavy work. I love McFoot. We give them one meal, hot meal a day, every single time they're with us. We pay them stipends, right? We make sure they have snacks. It helps the actual environment, right? It helps them who may didn't have a meal last night, who may be struggling. It makes the world of a difference of them actually having some hope to hold on to move forward. So pay them for their lived experience and feed them if you're going to have them for 2 hours or more. I mean, like those are the non-negotiables for me. We touched upon youth voice. We touched upon what needs to happen for them. We got to touch upon adults. They can't do it alone. And as adults, we have to hold the mirror up to ourselves to really say, what am I doing to steward authentic and intentional leadership within the young people that I am servicing? Who am I as a leader? Would be my question to adults, right? We ask young people who they are as leaders and who influence them. We got to ask ourselves that same question as adults, right? So that we can mirror that back. One, what we may have needed when we were younger. Two, what we've healed and we've evolved to in our adulthood. Or three, because it's just the right thing to do, right? So I believe that John Lewis always says like this quote of like, get in good trouble. Our young people are getting in good trouble because they're the ones that's actually doing the heavy lifting and the work. we need our adults to also make sure that they are lockstep and hand in hand with our young people if getting in good trouble.
What a lineup of incredible programs. It's so inspiring to hear from programs truly walking the walk and talking the talk when it comes to elevating youth voices. You can find links to all of the resources that our partners mentioned in the video description below. And if you'd like to connect with any of the featured programs or learn more, reach out to us at cyess@afterschoolalliance.org. There are also some additional interviews that didn't make it into this longer video, so check the description below to hear from even more programs. Thanks again for being an important part of this work. We can't wait to see what you build with your young people next.